Started playing guitar around 12 years old. The attraction probably started with just wanting to be like my dad. He taught me a few chords in the beginning, and then I would spend 4 hours in my basement pretty much every day just playing guitar and learning that. But then it grew into this like absolute love for music. It's always been a constant throughout any season of my life. Around senior year of high school is kind of when I had stopped going to church, but music was always there. And when you start adulting, you're kind of just by yourself and everybody kind of flees one way. That's it. There's no more bands. So my connection was still continuing worship at various churches. I was filling that void of, just wanting to be on a stage and kind of doing it for myself. There wasn't anything God related once I walked out the church building. I spent 10 years doing that. I felt like life just wasn't ever going right. There was a lot of, losing jobs, moving places, different disappointments along the way. Around the start of 2020, my wife at the time asked for a divorce, and that was right on the heels of COVID. And shortly thereafter, I was in a really dark space. 8 months or so into that, for the first time in my life, I was suicidal. I never thought I could ever get to that point, but I didn't want to create any issues for anybody. I wasn't like, it wasn't a cry for help. It was just I wanted out. There was one night when I was just in that dark space, I laid down for bed and I opened up my laptop and I typed in most painless ways to die, and my internet just stopped working. And so I tried reloading the page and it never worked. And so I just shut my laptop and went to bed. That next day, I worked with my dad at the time. And I remember him saying, when people have times like these and they're in crisis, he said, I don't think there's anything wrong with nearly demanding God, like, this is what I need right now. I'm on my way home in my truck. I was listening to K-Love radio, which wasn't abnormal for me to listen to. I had this David Crowder song on, and I really liked the song. And I remember, for some reason, I just felt like I should try this praying thing. It was almost for the first time in my life, I think I actually, tried to pray, legitimately pray. And I was like, well, this is the only chance that you have, God, to show me something. But I remember with that song on, I had turned it down so I could kind of do my prayer. I turned it back up and Crowder played the last 3 notes of the song. And I remember for a brief moment, being pretty irritated. Really, I just did this for you, and now you ended this song that I love. And then the next song that came on was this song called Together for King and Country. If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you're feeling alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand. We're gonna do this hand in hand. And then in that moment, almost physically felt like God literally grabbed hold of my heart, and I started crying so hard, I couldn't even see the road. And I ended up pulling over in a neighborhood and sat there for a good 30 minutes or so. I'd always thought of God oh, once you're with God, everything's happy and life is great because you have God. In that moment was the first time I had ever had a realization that God will always be there in those low moments as well. I ended up going to bed. I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I just had this overwhelming, read your Bible. I knew absolutely nothing of this story at all. I had heard the book before, but it was the book of Job. I ended up reading 21 chapters. It was exactly how I felt. It was this guy who had everything. In my case, I had the American dream, the 2 kids and the wife, and Job had everything and then absolutely lost everything. It just like opened my heart, opened my want to understand. I could no longer question that there was a God. And then it was Saturday morning, I was up and I looked up churches, found Traders Point that was like 4 minutes from my house. The first person I met was Bart Shaw. I didn't know he was the campus pastor. I just thought he was this nice guy who was on the welcome committee. And then I came back that next week with my kids. He took a real interest in Julia and Bennett. And then 2 weeks went by and I saw Bart again and he goes, "Hey, Julia and Bennett." That was a moment when I knew like this was a place I wanted to call home. I spent about a year just really enjoying my time at Traders Point. I felt so much hope. Like I just craved this and wanted it, and I didn't have all the answers, but once I was actually listening and I think I realized like, okay, there's for sure a God. Get into the congregation and listen and learn. I think it was just I was listening at that point, and I was never listening before. I'd like to think it was because of the moment that I had with God and my whole conversion, that God's brought me even closer to music. My perspective is so much different. The greatest gift that I can give to people is through music, and so that's why I'm on the Traders Point team. I'm a part of something. I get to stand up there and praise and worship Jesus alongside the people sitting in the seats. I just always wonder and hope that there's somebody out there that has that same level of connection, could impact them in the same way that it did 2 years ago for me.